Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GreenRoc Mining PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, all questions submitted today will be reviewed, with responses published on the Investor Meet Company platform where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I would like to submit the following poll, and if you could give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I'd now like to hand you over to CEO Stefan Bernstein. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this presentation today. So I'm happy to be able to give you an overview of GreenRoc Mining and share with you some of the latest developments on our projects, and also some of the latest development on the market that we are addressing. Also, I will of course be looking forward to sharing or to taking questions and having a dialogue with you after this presentation. Right, I will start this presentation, as you can see, with a photograph of Amitsoq Island in South Greenland. It is our graphite project, and it is really our most advanced project, and therefore most of this presentation will concern this project. And I think that you will agree with me after I've been through this presentation that the last 2 years of drilling at Amitsoq, and also the way that the market is developing and looks to be developing, that it really has taken GreenRoc Mining to another level, and we're now moving into a development stage on the Amitsoq Graphite. So let me just see here if I can. Sorry, here is the next slide. So the presentation here will be available after today on our website and also on the IMC website. So I'll leave these two disclaimer slides for you to read afterwards, and go on to the overview slide here. That, as I said, the way that our recent development has taken us in Amitsoq, we now see an enormous value in pursuing this project. So therefore, we can in short say the business objective for GreenRoc Mining is that we will develop through to responsible production of graphite raw materials for lithium battery anode production in Europe. But we have other assets also. On the map, you can see 4 projects, one in South Greenland, that's a graphite. Then we have 3 in North Greenland. There's the Inglefield multi-element project and the titanium project at TBS, and then finally the iron ore at Melville Bay. I will use most of this presentation today to talk about the Amitsoq Graphite, but I will also touch on the 3 other projects at the end. So with the conclusion of the drilling program, the second stage drilling program, just about a week ago at Amitsoq, it has been very successful, and I don't know whether you have seen the RNS that came out on Monday, but there you can read that about the results of the drilling, and it really looks like we will be able to increase our resource at the graphite project. So that means that we also now probably are sitting with a resource that it has a size that allows us to continue into development stage. There's also a very distinct market opportunity coming for us, because the graphite demand in Europe is going to increase compared to production or demand in 2022. That is this year here, is going to grow by 400% in only 3 years' time, and 800% by 2030. So I will discuss that a bit, and then to undertake all this work here, you have a group of very experienced, modestly, I will say, including myself, in the management team of GreenRoc. I can here there's the management team, and I'll also leave this slide for you to read in the presentation about the bios. But so Amitsoq Graphite Project. I think I'll start out discussing here a little bit about graphite, because it is really an overlooked commodity. It's been used for a long time. It has a very important application in the steels industry for crucibles and also foundries and other applications. But there is a huge growing demand for graphite for the battery industry. And when people talk about lithium batteries, people mostly talk about lithium and the supply chain challenges there are about lithium, and sometimes also about nickel and cobalt. If you look at a typical lithium battery, graphite really makes up the largest proportion of any single commodity, namely 22% by weight is composed of graphite, and only 2% of lithium. And then nickel and cobalt for the cathodes make up together less than the what's made up by graphite. So it is so that for about 1 kilowatt hour battery capacity, you need about 1 kilogram of graphite. So an average electric vehicle battery carries about between 40 and 80 kilograms of graphite. And it's not any odd graphite, it's a high purity spherical graphite. So in the left-hand side, you can see some illustrations that show the natural flake graphite to the left that are processed into small spheres. These spheres are between only 5 and 15 micron, that is 5 to 15 thousandths of a millimeter in diameter, and they have to be highly purified. So they are the so-called high purity spherical graphite that are eventually coated with carbon. And in order to produce 1 kilogram of this high purity spherical graphite, you need 2 kilograms of flake graphite. So that really doubles the need for graphite to produce the graphite for the batteries. Right. So what we have at Amitsoq is a graphite deposit that actually has been exploited about 100 years ago. So it was an active mine, a small one, but an underground mine. Taking advantage of the really high quality of the graphite. It was terminated about 100 years ago after being in production for only about 6-7 years due to the fall in graphite prices on the world market after the First World War. So it was not like the mine was exhausted or anything. It's located only 20 kilometers about north of the town of Nanortalik in the southern tip of Greenland. It favors a subarctic climate, so it's relatively mild here. So we have navigable waters year round. And so there was we conducted several studies over the past years here with the first diamond drilling taking place in 2021. And on the basis of that drilling last year, we were able to define a resource, JORC-compliant, inferred and indicated resource of more than 8 million tons of graphite ore, with the grade being nearly 20%, 19.75%. That puts us really within the top 2 of world graphite deposits under development. As you can see on the bar graph. On the other side, across the fjord, there's another area called the Galark that was discovered to contain several layers of graphite also some years ago. We haven't yet drilled that, but we can see that this also contains high-grade graphite ore. It's a bit more structurally complicated, But so it'll still needs drilling in order to constrain the resources here. So the more than 8 million tons of graphite was defined by last year's drilling. We conducted further drilling this year, and we accomplished to drill 19 holes for nearly 3,000 meters, and we hit mineable graphite in layers in all of the drill holes. As you can see on the right-hand side panel, there's a satellite image of the southern tip of Amitsoq. Exposed at surface here are two graphite layers that you can see in brown colors. They stretch from the southern tip towards the northeast along the coast, and this is where the old mine was situated. There's been a lot of sampling, of course, at the surface, demonstrating that the width of the graphite layers here were of several meters. But because graphite is very soft, the rock here is not very well exposed, and therefore we didn't know exactly what was hiding beneath the mountain until we started drilling last year. And with the drilling that took place from the blue drill pads A, E, B, and C, we were able to define the two graphite layers, an upper graphite layer and a lower graphite layer, where the upper has thicknesses between 3 and 8 meters, and the lower graphite layer between 5 and 15 meters thick. And it's on the basis of the surface exposures and these drilling from the blue drill pads that we were able to define the resource of nearly 8.3 million tons. This year's drilling has been enormously successful because not only does it confirm the thicknesses of these two layers, it also vastly expands the areas or the extent of the two layers. So that we found in 8 of the holes we found the upper graphite layer. It has thicknesses between 3 and 8 meters, and the low graphite layer is present in all of the holes, and it seems to be increasing in thickness from about 2.5 meters in the southern tip, quickly becoming 5 to 10 to 12 meters in the middle part, and then in the northern part and western part, it becomes mostly between around 15 meters thick. And in one of the holes, we hit more than 20 meters thickness of the lower graphite layer. And just judging on a visual inspection, we haven't received the assay results yet. They're still on the way to the labs. It looks like we have grades that are equal to those that we that the drilling last year resulted in. So very, very positive result. Adding to this, the deposit is still open towards the west, where it dips about 30 degrees to the west. It's also open towards the north, and in fact, you can see on this satellite image here that the graphite layers continue towards the northeast. So we're quite confident that whatever increased resource that we'll be able to define on the basis of the drilling we conducted now, it will be a minimum. There will be more graphite here to explore in the coming years. Okay, so that's really important. Of course, we have the graphite. We have lots of it. We have at least the 1.6 million tons that we defined the resource last year. It's going to be extended. We are quite certain about that. We'll see once we get the assays back, and of course we be able to do our 3D modeling. But then what about the quality? To that end, we have conducted metallurgical test work with a German specialist, Pro Graphite, and it demonstrates that the Amitsoq Graphite is a really high quality. Not only is it high grade, about 20%, but it can also easily be purified to more than 95% graphitic carbon. and achieving that is possible through simple flotation. And you can further take this, well, and that's very important because there's a minimum, there's a requirement that graphite concentrate should have a minimum of 94% graphitic carbon for the anode manufacturers to produce the graphite that are used in lithium batteries. So we can easily achieve better than 95%. And also it's a requirement that the high purity spherical graphite needs to be at a graphite concentration of better than 99.95%. So we took some of this graphite concentrate and treated it with a variety of chemicals, chemical leaching, and we were able to produce a high purity graphite product with 99.97%. So easily fulfilling the requirements for production of eventually high purity spherical graphite. Presently, that same lab in Germany are conducting tests on some of the graphite in order to see how well it can be formed into the spherical graphite. So one possibility for us, which I think is the most plausible way to market our product here, is that we have a sale of the coarser grain flake graphite concentrate that can be shipped directly from a processing plant in Greenland. That is of the coarser plus 150 micron, that is 0.15 millimeter graphite flakes, because there's no further treatment needed. It just needs to be flotated, and then you can ship it out to the customers. And then we would use the remaining about 85% of the production as the finer grain flakes as feedstock for spherical graphite for the lithium batteries. So what we're looking at here, in order to estimate what the production would look like. And this is needed, of course, for us to be able to start thinking about, okay, so what would a production here look like, and where would we put the processing plants and the crushers and all of that infrastructure. And we think that it's quite plausible here to have a production of between 300 and 400,000 tons of ore. So with about 20% graphite, that would yield between 60 and 80,000 tons of graphite concentrate per year. Of that, we'll then be selling the 15%, which is about 9 to 12,000 tons of the coarser flake graphite. And then we'll take the rest, the finer grain concentrate, and sell that for manufacturing of spherical graphite. And as you can see, the price difference is quite marked. It actually makes good business to sell the coarse flakes at about, which currently are traded at about 1,100 euros per ton, because the flotation is relatively low-cost processing. To produce spherical graphite is a lot more complicated, of course, but the product, coated high-purity spherical graphite, sells presently between $8,000 and $14,000 or euros per ton. And those prices are bound to go up with the surging demand that we are going to see in the future. So there's an interesting business opportunity also there in perhaps going part of the downstream here to produce the spherical graphite. I'll go on to that in a minute. So what would the next years bring for us at Amitsoq? Well, we've been thinking about how could we get into production as fast as possible. We think that would be very important for our company. It's important for Greenland also, and it's important for the European battery industry. So We have conducted the drilling. We may need to do a little bit of drilling next year, maybe not. We'll see on the resource calculations. But certainly in 2023, we will have a new resource definition. We will start the scoping study and conduct a scoping study, and we will also conclude the environmental impact assessment and the social impact assessment studies. So by early 2024, we are hopeful that we can submit an application for exploitation to the Greenland government. We will conduct a preliminary feasibility study and start pilot processing test work, leading into 2025 of a DFS, definitive feasibility study, and with the mine planning for construction, processing plants, and port. And that would lead us into 2026 in full construction, leading to production start. Well, it'll be a wonderful Christmas present if we could start production in 2026. But if not 26, then early 27. And I think that this actually has some merits. This quite fast tracking to production, because we're really looking at a relatively simple mine design and the mining operation, and also the flotation is pretty straightforward. Graphite is a non-toxic material, so it's a pretty benign operation. Also, we have this deep sea access right to the mine entrance, basically. So it's easy to both bring heavy machinery in. It's easy to export the products. And then alongside with this development plan, we are also considering further getting into the processing techniques of producing the high purity spherical graphite. It's something that requires, of course, some technical insights, but that is something that we presently are certainly looking into. So to that end, we took out 700 kilogram bulk sample from the lower graphite layer here in September that is presently being shipped. And we are intending to use that to explore the various avenues of spheronization and micronizing. Okay, so that's good. We got the graphite in and we have the quality. So then what is the market looking like? I mentioned the battery industry in Europe. There certainly are ambitions to have domestic production of car batteries. And of course, it is European car producers that are pursuing this. And there's actually quite a few of these so-called gigafactories already, either in production already or in construction. So presently, about 21 of these are in production or construction in Europe at the moment. They will be producing they'll be producing about 350 gigawatt hours per year in only 3 years' time, and more than 500 gigawatt hours in 2030. Additionally, we have 17 gigafactories that are being planned for opening in 2025. That means that construction must be starting very soon, and 2 further for 2030, bringing the gigafactories in Europe up to about 40 operating in 2030. So that puts a range to the capacity that these gigafactories are going to produce in a few years' time. And if you translate this into the demand for graphite, it is so that in 2025, the demand is going to be, just for feeding the European gigafactories, between 700,000 ton and more than 1 million ton of graphite. And in 2030, between 1 and 2 million tons of graphite. depending on how many of these factories that will be coming on stream. If you compare to the numbers today, the world global production of graphite is about 1 million ton, and that goes for all applications. So this is a huge demand that is going to arrive here in just a few years' time. And so what's true for a lot of other commodities, what we've been talking about, security, our supply chains, such as for rare earth elements, such as for lithium, such as for cobalt, this certainly is true too for graphite. Presently, there is no European graphite production of spherical graphite for these batteries. The European battery companies would have to source all of their spherical graphite from China. So that means that there's a huge market for domestic production of spherical graphite. And graphite in general, where is that produced in Europe? Well, there's only one mine operating as of today, and that is the Skarland mine in northern Norway. It produces less than 10,000 tons per year of graphite. That graphite is of such high quality, it's really large flakes, it's very pure, that it's used for a lot of other applications than batteries. So they're probably not going to add a lot of material to their battery production. Then there are 3 other projects coming, potentially coming on stream in the coming years. Also in Scandinavia, there's Talgas Vittangi. In northern Sweden, there's Voxna by Leading Edge in mid-Sweden, and then Autolampi in Finland that Graphite is developing. And then, of course, we have Amitsoq in Greenland. Together, these will be able to produce about, let's say, 100 to 120,000 tons per year in 3 or 4 years' time. And by 2030, perhaps 300,000 tons. But this is, as you can see, less than a third of the needs. So there's a huge market that is going to be only partly supplied by even those planned production, European production. European production is also welcomed by the fact that it would be much produced under much better regulated conditions, whereas presently production in China and in Africa are under questionable conditions, both socially and environmentally. So that's one, you could say, competitive advantage. There's also the security of the supply lines that is certainly better if we have domestic production. And then finally, there's actually also like a financial competitive advantage, namely that it's much closer to the market. It's pretty basic, but actually when you look at it, shipping from Amitsoq to Northern Europe, it's only between around 1,500 nautical miles, which takes about 4 or 5 days with a ship. Now, from Mozambique to Hamburg, it is about 8,000 nautical miles, or about 30 days at sea. And from China to Hamburg, it's about 12,500 nautical miles, or more than 40 days at sea. So surely that's going to be adding to the competitiveness of graphite sourced in Europe. Right, and I just mentioned some of the environmental aspects here. I think I'm happy also to be able to show you this slide here that sketches out a potential hydropower plant operation or electricity production northeast of Nanortalik. It's at Dasjøsasuk, which has a planned hydropower production. It's not a huge hydropower plant, but it supplies sufficiently that we can run mining operation and processing plants and other things from it. It's about has a potential capacity of 17 gigawatt hours. That means that we would be able also to mark our graphite as a zero carbon dioxide production. Okay, that is the Amitsoq Graphite. That is, as you can tell, it's something that really absorbs a lot of our resources at the moment. It has a lot of our attention because we believe also that's the quickest avenue to a positive cash flow in GreenRoc mining. But we do have 3 other projects. I'll just briefly go through them with you. We have the titanium ore at Thule. So it concerns ilmenite, which is an industrial mineral that is found on a stretch of coastal sands in northern Greenland. It's next door, so to speak, to Blue Jay's Dundas Titanium Project. It's the same style of mineralization. This is ilmenite that is concentrated in beach sands. So we have 3 areas we're currently developing. There's a southern, middle, and northwestern area. All 3 of them were drilled in 2018. In 2018, the drilling was partly successful. It was successful in the way that we were able to acquire a lot of sample material, but we were not able to penetrate the permafrost. Nevertheless, we arrived at a JORC-compliant resource of 19 million tons with in situ ilmenite that grades about 9%. That for a resource of 1.7 million tons of contained ilmenite. Excuse me. So in 2021, we conducted drilling with a sonic drill that was able to penetrate the permafrost. So we have a resource upgrade coming, and we also have embarked on a environmental impact assessment and social impact assessment studies that eventually would lead to exploitation permitting. So ilmenite is an industrial mineral. It's the main feedstock for producing titanium, which is a very high strength and lightweight metal. But most importantly is the production of titanium dioxide, which is a pigment which is used in a huge variety of products, including paints, plastics and fillers and all sorts of things. There's a huge demand for titanium dioxide and a very stable market. The drilling we conducted in 2021 was just carried out on the southern part, which contains some of the higher grade parts of the deposits. It is shown to the right here with the drill sites. We were able to accomplish nearly 250 holes, and we are currently still waiting the resource update, and that is because the first resource estimates that was attempted excluded the material that was coarser than 1 millimeter. So we are currently reanalyzing the material here to include the fraction between 1 millimeter and 5 to 10 millimeters, because there's a resource of ilmenite there that was not taken into account, and that is a mistake we're going to rectify. But so that will take a bit further time. But the positive side here is that we concluded most of the field work for the EIA, that is the environmental impact assessment, this year. There's only a little bit of follow-up work, namely to collect the dust collectors that were put out in the field. And then we will go on with the social impact assessment. Good. The two last projects, there's the Melville Bay iron ore project. This is a project that is just a bit to the south of the Thule Black Sands, the TBS project. It was drilled in 2012 by the former owner, and they were able to demonstrate a JORC compliant inferred resource of 63 million tons at 31% iron. More importantly, the work that was done then shows that there's a huge geophysical anomaly to the northeast of this resource. There was part of the drilling took place there for a variety of reasons. They weren't able to drill the geophysical anomaly at the center, but they drilled at the fringes, and it shows that there are intercepts that has better than 60% iron, and there are also some surface samples that suggest that there is potential here for direct shipping ore of more than 60% iron. Right, and that's something we are still exploring, and we have loads of data that just awaits inferring and consideration here in order to take this forward. And then lastly, we have the Inglefield multi-element project. It concerns so-called iron oxide copper gold IOCG deposits potential. It's known to be huge, potentially huge deposits, but relatively low grade. It's dominated by iron oxide, as it says, and then copper gold, but there could be other elements along with these type of mineralizations, including cobalt, vanadium, and nickel. Examples of such deposits would be the giant Olympic Dam in Australia, but also the Aitik in northern Sweden. So it's a good big target. It's low grade, so they can be difficult to identify. Also, it's in a place that requires some quite logistical planning. So I think that you will appreciate that with all the work that we have conducted on Amitsoq, it's not been possible for us to cover these two projects this year. But we have them in our portfolio, and we'll consider working on them in the coming time. I should also just tell you that as of today, there has been conducted, there'll be released a research report by Allenby Capital that we have asked to undertake a research on GreenRoc mining our assets. And they put out the report today. It's available on Allenby Capital's website, and also on GreenRoc Mining's website under Investors Relations and Broker Research. As you will see in that report, they arrive at a very positive valuation of our company. So I'm very happy to direct you to that report. These are some of the companies here showing their logos that we have been engaged with in the conduction of our field work and development work. So with this, I'll conclude this presentation, and I'll be happy to receive questions that I'll try my best to answer.
Stefan, that's great. And if I may just jump back in there, and thank you very much indeed for your presentation today. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while Stefan takes a few moments to review those questions that were submitted already, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Stefan, we did receive a number of pre-submitted questions ahead of today's event, as well as you can see in the Q&A tab, a number of questions that have been submitted throughout today's presentation itself also. If I could just hand back to you to respond to those questions where it's appropriate to do so, and then if I pick up from you at the end, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Yes, sure. So there were some questions here that were posed prior to the presentation. So I'll just read those. One here is how long will it be before GreenRoc begins to monetize its assets in Greenland? And of course, the short answer to that is as soon as possible. And as presented in here, we are hoping to be in production already in 26, 27. Second question is, when exactly do you start mining graphite? Well, I mean, I just gave an answer, so to speak, but I will also elaborate a little bit to say that it's difficult to give exact dates because it's a fairly, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a complicated process, but there's a lot of different tasks to undertake. For instance, the EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment, Social Impact Assessment, exploitation permitting, impact benefit agreements, and preliminary economic assessments and all of that. We'll do it, and we'll do it as fast as possible. So I think 2026, 27 is a good estimate. Question 3, will GreenRoc personnel be mining graphite themselves, or will you hire other companies to do it? Well, I think that, I mean, you can tell from our name that GreenRoc Mining aspires to be a mining company with our own production. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't want to partner up with a company that already has the expertise. So a joint venture would, of course, be welcome on all aspects of the business here. Yeah. Question 4: to whom will GreenRoc sell its mined graphite? Can you name possible business partners? So the graphite manufacturing industry in Europe is quite large and diversified. So we are already looking at several of these and have talked to them. And some of them are certainly potential customers for our coarse-grained graphite material. For the finer-grained flakes that potentially could be used to manufacture spherical graphite, it's so that we presently don't have any European producers. So today we'll have to sell it to a Chinese company. I think that we really should be thinking of developing our own production of spherical graphite. And that leads me to question 5. Will GreenRoc extract, supply, and sell raw materials exclusively, or does the company plan to refine the extracted graphite itself? Well, as I presented here, we intend to sell the coarser grained fractions at about 15% of the production directly to customers in Europe, because it's a minimum of processing, so it makes really good sense to sell that directly. I think that the business opportunities by manufacturing our own spherical graphite is so promising that I think that we would try to first explore what actions do we need to take to get into depth with the technical details of that, and then find out whether we can either partner with another company to undertake this, or perhaps raise sufficient funds to do it ourselves. And I think I've been talking to a series of fund managers, including some of the government funds, about these possibilities, and it's actually possible to receive some public funding also on developing the technical abilities to produce spherical graphite. So I think that could be a wonderful possibility for us to conduct this alongside and parallel to developing the mining operation in Greenland. Okay, so what sales do you expect in the first year of the graphite production? The first year, well, if we do come into production 20 26, then we probably won't have full production. So, but I would say the first full year production, we will be hoping for about 5,000 to 8,000 tons of coarse flakes and about another 40,000 tons of fine flake concentrate. So about 50,000 tons. Present day prices, if we didn't go the route of micronizing, spheronizing the graphite, well, we could sell this because of the high quality, probably at a price of about 900 euros per ton, directly off the processing plant in Greenland, which would give us about a 40 million euro turnover per year for this type of production. The production will then be ramping up to about 80,000 tons of graphite per year in the years to come. Question 7. If a major company approached for joint venture, would you consider buying out Alba Mineral Resources, which is a major shareholder at the moment? Would GreenRoc be in a position to purchase Stallion Resources Greenland license or licenses held by George Franciscides, who is presently our chairman, as these are also Greenland projects? And it's a little bit of a complicated question, but I think the short answer to that is that with the Amitsoq project, we have such a great asset that looking at other projects at the moment outside our own would seem to be a distraction. So no. Okay, so those are the 7 questions. I have another one here. Can you explain why further testing required of drilling results from Thule black sands? Why necessary to test larger than 1 millimeter? Well, it is because the resource estimate that was put out last year was based on material between 0.053, that is a lower limit, and up to 2 millimeters of material. And now the test work that's been done up to now, or the assays have been conducted of material that is only going up to 1 millimeter. And that is, of course, it gives a lower tonnage, but it also excludes a lot of potentially ilmenite-bearing material. So we need really to have comparable results before we can have a robust resource estimate. So that is why we are still conducting test work or assay work. Another question, sorry, that was from Martin J. I don't know whether I should read the names here. There's another question here. Is the chemical purification process at the graphite mine toxic and complicated? And how easy will it be to get a mining exploitation permit? Right. So yes, I can guarantee you that the purification process is toxic in a sense. You definitely don't want to take a shower in it. It's not complicated. There are 2 ways that you can purify graphite. One is by submitting the graphite concentrate to hydrofluoric acid. That is the traditional way it's been done in China. And it's not complicated, but it is toxic. And you definitely don't want to, if you can avoid handling hydrofluoric acid, you definitely want to do that. The test work we've conducted shows that we can achieve 99.96% clean, ultra pure graphite by HF, the hydrofluoric acid leaching. But we have also conducted test work by another method, which is a lot more or a lot less toxic. It's a sodium hydroxide. That is an alkaline leaching, which is basically what you clean your plumbing system at home with. Submitting the graphite concentrate there actually gives us a even better result of 99.97% pure graphite. So that is the way we'll be undertaking. It's a lot simpler, a lot cheaper, a lot less toxic than the hydrofluoric acid. How easy will it be to get a mining exploitation permit? Well, if we fulfill all the requirements, of course, if we conduct the EIA, SIA, and so on, there's no reason why it should be very complicated. I wouldn't say it's a routine thing, but there are certain tasks that we have to undertake, and you can tick them all. And I don't think, from what I've seen up to now, there's nothing really that would be a hindrance to us obtaining an exploitation permit. Whilst I think GreenRoc is a great investment, share trade volumes seem to indicate my enthusiasm is not shared. What are you doing to get more investor interest? Well, we are holding this presentation, for instance. That's one thing. And then we are also having this research report done. We will be visiting and talking to a lot of potential shareholders. We are also talking to companies both in the graphite industry and the processing industry and the mining industry in terms of partnering. And we will continue putting out news in the coming time here that I really am anticipating will be positive. Very soon we'll have the results of the how well our graphite product spheronizes, for instance, and we'll have the new resource update of Amitsoq Graphite deposit here during November or early December. Excuse me. Many mining projects in Europe are on hold due to local opposition. Is that a problem in Greenland, and how do you overcome it? Yes. First of all, it's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of quite good-looking mineral assets in Europe that don't really seem to get beyond resource definition and planning and scoping studies, simply because people are opposed to the projects, or permitting is really sluggish, or both. In Greenland, we are blessed with an environment where people are very welcome to mining. They are used to exploit the country's natural resources, both the living and the mineral resources. There's been a range of mines in Greenland over the. It is actually an old mining country, and there's never been really local opposition to the mining, as long as, of course, as we are following the regulations and make sure that we are living up to the best standards. Then we don't see that should be a problem. And of course, we are holding meetings with the locals, both in the Untitled Chapter and also with the government in Nuuk. And up to now, we've only been feeling very welcome. There's one here. Do you have an estimate date for the assay return? So I would say that with some luck, we should have the assays back in mid-November. And then we're hopeful that, because we can already now make the calculations of the volumes, it should be relatively quick to arrive at a resource definition. And here we are in a very good situation that the Amitsoq Graphite is very clear-cut deposit. You are either in white granite or gneisses, or you're in black graphite-bearing rock. So the cutoff grade, so to speak, would be more or less the grade of the ore, and it's easy to log. It's white or black. Let me just have a look here. There's one here. Do you have a market in mind for the batteries? Are you going EV or another direction? And do you plan to work directly with manufacturers, or would this be through a generic supplier? Any companies in mind? Right. It's a good question. I mean, we are definitely, well, we at least we would like to go that way to produce eventually spherical graphite for the batteries. I think that has to be carried out in close collaboration or coordination with at least one battery manufacturer in order for us to make sure and be certain that right from the beginning we can produce a product that meet all the requirements for the battery industry. One thing is to make the spheronized graphite, but to meet the requirements to have consistent high quality product is something else. So we will almost certainly have to be in somehow closely collaborating with at least one battery manufacturer. Then we have here as of the end of May, your reported cash position was 1.8 million pounds. How far would this take you on your roadmap to production? Yes, so we are still an early stage exploration company. There will be a need from along the route to production to raise further funds. For instance, a pilot plant is going to cost something. Perhaps a further drilling, whatever that requires, and then certainly production in itself. Once we start looking at mine planning and actual construction, we're looking at, of course, a pretty hefty investment. But at that point, we hope, obviously, that we can partner with either mining companies or battery companies or somebody else to help us along that way. Thank you for such a detailed presentation. Well, you're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, thank you for your nice comments here. I'm just looking for a question. What month is your next predicted fundraise needed? Well, I mean, I can't be specific on that. We haven't decided yet on our forward program in detail, but certainly we are also seeking, as I just mentioned, some other avenues of funding. For instance, as I said, we are looking at government funds. There are also potential funding to be obtained through the EU. We are part of the ERMA, that is the European Raw Material Alliance. We have submitted a proposal to the Raw Material Alliance that is presently being considered. So we'll see where that leads us. There are several ways that we can exploit. Yeah, I think how long do you think it would take to get? I think we'll make this the last question. How long do you think it would take to get exploitation licenses? There's been a lot of pressure and also some expressed wish from the Greenland government to speed up the processing time. Some of the application process has been held back for some other projects because of, for instance, radioactive minerals that are contained in the ore. We don't have an issue here with uranium in our ore. I would think, because it's a relatively simple operation, that if once we have all of the requirements ready. We have conducted the required environmental impact assessments and so on. I would say it's a matter of months to have an exploitation permit processed, and not years, for sure. And as I said, there's a lot of focus from the Greenland government and from the current and past resource ministers to speed up the process. Okay, thank you very much. I will conclude this now, and any outstanding questions, I will take a look at them after this session here and see whether I can answer them.
Stefan, that's great, and thank you very much indeed for being so generous of your time there and addressing all of those questions that came in from investors this afternoon. And of course, as you did kindly just mention, we will make all the questions available to you post the call for you to review and then add any additional responses where it's appropriate to do so. Stefan, perhaps before redirecting those on the call to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, if I could please just ask you for a few closing comments to wrap up with, that'd be great.
Yes, so it's been a real pleasure for me today here to be able to present to you GreenRoc Mining, and you could say our contribution to the green transition from Greenland, and supplying the battery manufacturers in the coming time with high quality graphite mined in a responsible way in Greenland. So I look forward to holding another presentation when we have some important news to present to you.
Stefan, that's great, and thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly appreciated by the company. On behalf of the management team of GreenRoc Mining PLC, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good afternoon to you all.
Bye now.